Hi, my name is Edward Willett, and I'm the host of the World Shapers podcast. This is a podcast which won the Roar Award for Best Fan-Related Work in Canada last year, in which I talk to other science fiction and fantasy authors about the creative process. And I say other science fiction and fantasy authors because I am myself an author of science fiction and fantasy, the award-winning author of more than 60 books of science fiction, fantasy, and nonfiction for readers of all ages. My main publisher is Daw Books in New York, and my most recent book is called Master of the World. It's book 2 in a series called The World Shapers, or World Shapers. And yes, the fact that the podcast is called The World Shapers and the book series is called World Shapers is not a coincidence. But one reason that I started the podcast was because the World Shapers book series is about shapers of worlds who live within those worlds. They've made them the way they want, and then they live inside them. So a bit like authors who would be living inside the worlds that they've created. That got me thinking about the creative process, and I've always enjoyed talking to other authors about the creative process, I like to talk shop, I guess you'd say. And I have a background as a newspaper reporter and editor, and I've hosted radio programs, and I've hosted TV shows. So I thought, well, let's bring those different things together into a podcast, and that's how the World Shapers podcast was born. Now, with some of the connections I've made in the field over the years, I was able to start with a bang. My first 3 guests on my first weekend were John Scalzi, Robert J. Sawyer, and Tanya Huff, which I thought, that's not bad. And I've had many more great guests since then. All it seems I have to do is ask. So I've had people like Orson Scott Card and Tad Williams and David Brin and Victoria Schwab and Lee Modesitt Jr. and Joe Haldeman. And the list just goes on. And if you go to the World Shapers website at theworldshapers.com, you can see a complete list and listen to all of these interviews. Not long before I started the World Shapers podcast and the World Shapers book series, I started my own publishing company called Shadowpaw Press, which is named after our black Siberian cat, Shadowpaw. And I started it, of course, as many authors are now, to publish some of my own work that hadn't found an outlet yet elsewhere, and I had a couple of other projects that I wanted to get out there. But it occurred to me that I could combine that with the World Shapers podcast and showcase fiction from some of these amazing authors who have been so willing to talk to me for the podcast. And so at the end of the first year, I reached out to everyone who had been a guest up to that point, and I asked if they would be interested in being part of such an anthology. Now, of course, some were busy, a lot were busy, some were just not short fiction writers, so not everybody said yes, but everybody supported the idea. And at the end of all that, I've ended up with 14 authors from my first year of podcasting who were willing to be part of this anthology. I've got 8 who are contributing new fiction and 6 who are contributing reprints. And I mean, the list is pretty impressive. I have to look at a piece of paper because I don't want to forget anybody. We've got original fiction from Tanya Huff, Edward Willett, duh, Seanan McGuire, Lee Modesitt Jr., Dave Butler, John C. Wright, Christopher Rocchio, and Shelley Adina. And we'll have reprints from John Scalzi, Julie Cerneda, Joe Haldeman, Thoraya Dyer, Derek Kunsken, and Chuck Gannon. And there's some others who have said maybe and might still contribute either an original story or a reprint to the anthology. So I think that sounds like a pretty great book of fiction, and I'm really excited to bring it to life and bring it to the public. And that's where this Kickstarter comes in. If you would like to read fiction by this great collection of authors, then please check out the rewards that we put together for it. Check out the biographies of the people involved. Some of those authors you know, some you may not know, but you're missing out. If you haven't read, if you've missed reading any of them, you're missing out. So check all that out, and I really hope that you will help bring Shapers of Worlds, the anthology, Volume 1, I hope, because I hope there will be a Volume 2 featuring guests from my second year of podcasting. Help me bring Shapers of Worlds, Volume 1, to life. Thanks for your support, and I hope to see you kicking in soon.